making sure that you all know that you have a choice for comptroller, someone who's going to look out for your tax dollars and make sure that they're spent effectively. We got a Jan Duddy fan right here. We had a really good problem today in that there are more folks than there were seats here in this room. And so you have the good fortune of getting an abbreviated speech from me, not a long-winded stem winder. I wanted to introduce myself, share a few thoughts and ideas, and then we want to turn the floor over to you, get as many voices, questions, people entering this conversation as possible. My best opportunity to serve this community, Woodville and Tyler County, is to first listen to and learn from the people that I want to serve. So I'm going to try to keep it brief on my part so that I can listen to you. And then what we may do is go outside and join the folks who are out there in that heat, although it is overcast now. It's a real blessing. So they're able to cool down. And we'll even join some folks who want to welcome us in a different way, who are across the street. And they're holding up signs and yelling and using the megaphone too. But listen, before we're Republicans, before we're Democrats, before we're anything that defines us based on our differences, we're Americans, we're Texans, and we're human beings. Treat each other with the kindness and the compassion, the respect, and the dignity that each of us is owed. And in my religious tradition, we want to treat each other as we, in turn, would love to be treated. And so I do my best, not always successfully, to try to be respectful and kind and compassionate to others. Again, always a work in progress, right? So look, this cute little baby in the second row doesn't have a vote or a voice in this election that's taking place in November. And yet I think you all will agree with me, they're going to have to live with whatever we do or fail to do more than any one of us. So up to us right now to vote our interests and to vote the interests of every child who's counting us. The people of the future, who I guarantee are going to look back on us, the people of 2022, and wonder what we did at this defining moment of truth. Here's some things I would love to accomplish, in part based on listening to you as I travel the entirety of this state. Number one, this kiddo is going to need a world-class public school education to be able to achieve their lifetime. You can put all the money you want in the fancy classrooms and the latest technology and ball fields and all that stuff. And listen, it's not unimportant. But it pales in comparison to that teacher, that counselor, that librarian, that person in the classroom in front of that child who, when they are set free to do their job and answer their calling, they're going to stoke that kid's curiosity, unleash a lifelong love of learning. We do that. There's no stopping that kid. There is no stopping that state. But right now, we are stopping our teachers from being able to do that. They are leaving the profession by the thousands across the state. We're losing them so fast that too many kids, my 11-year-old who just completed 5th grade as an example, are going the entire academic year without a permanent classroom teacher. And those who remain are taking on sometimes double the class size that they had before, although we're not doubling their salary. In fact, very often, more often than not, they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. When we compound that by telling them which version of history they're allowed to teach, whose story can be represented in the classroom, when we ask them to turn in the parents of a transgender kid for child abuse and threaten to take that kid from them and turn them over to the foster care system run by CPS, where we have lost the lives of 100 children since the year 2020 under Greg Abbott's watch. It is no wonder it is so hard to retain and to attract more teachers into the profession. So, we've come together with this proposal. We pay these teachers enough so they don't have to take on a second or third job. They just focus on the most important job, that child in front of them in a classroom like this one. 2, If they're a retired teacher and have not seen a cost of living adjustment since the year 2004, we make sure there's one every single year going forward that keeps pace with inflation so they don't have to work into their retirement. 3, we listen to them about what they need most when it comes to connecting with those kids. And when I hear them to a person saying is it's not a high time to focus on those kids in that classroom. That's what we're trying to do, is allow them to achieve it. Second big idea after public ed is the kind of jobs that we can expect to see here in Tyler County. Now listen, all of us want a job that pays. I mentioned teachers working 2 of those jobs just to make ends meet. A job that provides fulfillment and purpose and function. You can't wait to or whatever it is that you do, you feel like God put you on the planet to perform this function in the first place. That's what I want for my 3 kids. It's probably what you want for your kids and grandkids. I want to make sure that the investment from this state, working with our next comptroller, comes to every part of the state. We don't begrudge the success in the DFW metro area or Houston or Austin or San Antonio or other parts of the state. We want to make sure that we get our fair share of the resources. What I hear from listening to you is that it's very hard to get online and have reliable, high-speed internet in Tyler County. Try finding a job, starting a business, finishing your education. If you're single and lonely, try finding a date tonight if you cannot get online. Find that match that the gods of the internet have produced for you. We take that for granted in so much of the rest of the developed world. Why is that not a fact of life here? So as governor, I want to make sure that regardless, no me importa, regardless of where you live in the state, whether you have a Republican state rep or a Democrat, that doesn't matter, you get the same resources as every other part of the state. We attract more young people, we keep more of them here, they start more businesses, more higher value, higher skill, higher wage jobs come to these communities. Last one, big idea, is being able to see a doctor. Right now, we're the least insured state in America. It means it's harder to see a doctor, fill a prescription, take your kid to a therapist if that's what they need, than in any other state. And not only is it an inconvenience, more children die, unfortunately, of diabetes, totally preventable death in this state than they do in any other. The largest provider of mental health care services in the state of Texas is the county jail system in the state of Texas. And when someone who has schizophrenia but is uninsured and is suffering and in crisis, very often they will get arrested, sometimes on purpose, to be taken to the county jail, the one place they're guaranteed any kind of care at all. Not only is that immoral, it is extraordinarily expensive for all of us. It's like $100 to $120 a night, depending on the county, to keep someone locked up who, for a fraction of that, we could connect with care. They get that care, they can get back to raising their families, going to work, starting a job, running for office, creating jobs as a small business owner or entrepreneur. It's in everyone's interest for everyone to be healthy enough and well enough to live to their full potential. Here's the big idea. Expand Medicaid, which would bring $10 billion back, of money that you and I paid up to the federal government in the form of income taxes. $10 billion comes down. We stand up more of these closed rural hospitals throughout the state, hire more providers, fund the medical school educations of your kids and grandkids. We go to a medical school class in Texas, it is overwhelmingly represented by big city kids, kids from the suburbs. We don't have enough people from rural communities. We restore something called the Rural Scholars Program. We pay full freight for your nursing or medical school education on condition that you make a commitment to come back to Tyler County and practice medicine and take care of people for at least 6 years. That's a way to grow our own solution to some of the challenges we have. And the kicker, will lower your property taxes in the bargain, because right now, when someone takes themselves to a hospital, doesn't have insurance because we failed to expand Medicaid, they're still going to get care. The outcomes are not going to be as good as it would have been otherwise because that care has been delayed for so long, and it will be exponentially more expensive because of all the complications and difficulties that have ensued. But that bill, even if you can't pay it, doesn't go away. It gets distributed amongst everybody else who can pay through their county property taxes. So expanding Medicaid, which Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, our 4 border states, 3 of them with Republican governors, have all done, is just the most common sense thing in the world that I can think of, especially since we, the people of Texas, through the first Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, came up with Medicaid in the first place in the year of our Lord, 1965. This is our program. Those are our dollars. We win this election. We're bringing that money back here. That's all we're about right now. World-class public schools, great jobs, the ability to see a doctor. Contrast that with the chaos, the confusion, the corruption, the cruelty, the incompetence from the folks who are in power today who can't keep the power on for the people that they're supposed to serve when the temperature drops, who cannot oversee the CPS system and get it back on the right foot, who 9 weeks after Uvalde have changed not a thing to make it easier for kids to go into those classrooms without fearing that they're going to be killed by somebody with an AR-15 or an AK-47. A governor who has outlawed abortion with no exception for rape or incest, in a state with one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the developed world, 3 times as deadly for black women in the state of Texas as it is for white women in the state of Texas. That's the other side. That's the stuff that they want to do to us. In Greg Abbott's Texas, it's you or me. He's going to divide us by our differences, tell you who to hate and who to be afraid of. In our Texas, it's you and me. We all come together to do the big things together. You all with me on this? Let me hear your thoughts, your suggestions, your ideas. Here we'll do this. We'll take turns. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll recognize you and get you in. We're going to go with this gentleman first.
Considering how much your policies have changed in the last few years, how can we trust you to maintain a 4-year position without changing everything?
All I can tell you is you got to judge me by what I have done. When I served in Congress for 6 years, every day of that I was on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, something I committed to my community I would serve on. It's not where you go to raise campaign cash or make headlines or rise up the leadership ladder. No one wants to serve there because there are no political action committees. There are no vested interests or special interests who give a damn about what happens there, even though we are serving the most important people in our community. Though I was a minority member, a Democrat in a Republican majority institution, I got legislation passed to improve access to mental health care for veterans, to rewrite the post 9/11 GI Bill to connect more people with earned educational benefits, and I did it by making deals with Republicans. Finding consensus, compromising where we have to, getting that legislation signed into law by Donald J. Trump, a guy I agree with on almost nothing, but we can find enough common ground on that. So look at what I committed to my constituents when I first ran for Congress in 2012. Look at what I delivered. That's just one example. Hear what I'm saying right now and hold me accountable. I don't know how often Greg Abbott's in this room taking your questions the way that I am, but when we win this election, I'm right back here to be held accountable. For you to ask me, hey Beto, where are you on these big 3 things that we talked about this day? I mean, I think it's the only way that we can do it. It's the only way that we get government that is reflective and responsive to all of us. Thanks for asking the question.
Can you see the picture?
I can see a picture in a red shirt from this distance.
And the other is you. That's my son.
Well, it looked like a very tall guy.
That's you with my son. I'm okay. I do have a question for you.
Please.
But out of respect for you and for your party, I consider myself an independent.
Great.
I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm here to listen and learn.
That's good.
Best thing for me to talk to you about, I would have to get off in a corner and talk to you. So if you have the time.
Let's do it. I will make the time. So
Okay.
before we leave Woodville today, I want to make sure that you and I have a chance to talk. Chris is standing right next to you from my team.
It won't take
He's going
long.
to make sure that we connect
It
before
won't
we
be
go.
long.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
We'll go all the way to the back and I'll come back up to some of these front rows.
Okay. Thank you for being here today. What I wanted to ask is about families that's on Section 8. The housing market done went up so high that it's above the limit that Section 8 will pay right now. What you gonna do to help the people from becoming homeless?
Thank you for asking this question. Whether it's Section 8 or whether it's housing for veterans, hundreds of whom will be sleeping on the streets under the sky tonight, even though they were willing to give their lives to this country. Whether it's your appraisal notices, which in some counties have gone up 50%, we are not building enough housing, enough apartments for the people who are in this state and the people who are moving to this state. As governor, I want to partner with this local community. Use financing tools like tax credit housing programs at the statewide level to provide the financing to build housing, including affordable housing and Section 8 housing, so that everybody's got a roof over their head. What I've learned by listening to people who are experiencing homelessness, right, because they understand it probably better than anyone else, is your ability to find a job, to get connected with healthcare, to successfully raise your kids. When you think about those 32,000 kids in the foster care program right now, is all tied to being able to have a consistent place to call your own. An address that you can put on the employment application form or the student loan application form. A place that your kids can come home to every day after school instead of bouncing around from one couch to another. How many of those 32,000 kids in CPS care right now could be safely with their parents or grandparents if we could have just addressed the fundamental issue of housing? And unless anyone thinks that we don't have the resources to do this, our economy in the state of Texas is $2 trillion large. It's the 9th largest on the planet. Our biannual budget is $250 billion a year. I'm going to work with Janet and Republicans for that matter to make sure that we prioritize the resources to get people housing. And much as I said with healthcare, even if you're not experiencing a crisis in housing, you may wonder, well, why is this any problem of mine? When our neighbor is able to successfully get into that home, they're then also able to more fairly shoulder their share of the burden for property taxes or anything else, making it a little bit lighter on you. We all do better when all of us have an opportunity to do better. Housing's fundamental to that. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Cynthia says 2 more, and so I'll take this one. We'll do 2 more after. I'm going to get you because you've been so patient, and then Cynthia will pick the last one. Sir.
First, that's my wife right there. She has a drum skin, if you don't mind signing it for me.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? I've been playing for 50 years. I want to talk about an idea that I can't get out on Twitter or on Facebook. And the chance to be able to say this to you and to a comptroller potential right has merit. This part of the country, as I move, I travel the world. I'm in IT and I work remotely. I'm very fortunate that way. The internet and COVID has allowed me to do so. I come here and I see that there are a lot of brilliant minds and no further education or trade schools hardly at all after you leave high school, and the brain drain is real, and you only shop at Dollar General or Walmart or Brooks Brothers. It's all there is to shop. There's no industry in this area that's diversified outside of lumber. So I have an idea for you and you. We're all capitalists, we all agree that the people who are at the border right now, who are struggling under bridges trying to come over here, yo trabajo en Colombia, tres meses per año. So whenever I travel there, I pay a federal tax and a state tax to that area whenever I work there. Why can't we encourage American Express, Visa, Discover, MasterCard, all of those to hold an ID card for those immigrants who come across? We charge a 20% state tax that allows us to be able to allow them to be able to pay highway taxes, to pay for hospitals, to pay for education, to allow them to come here and earn an honest living. And instead of the people across the street saying that those people don't deserve to be here, and we're all immigrants in this place, right? We all came here from somewhere else. Give those an equal chance, and then that money at the state coffer level can help fund other trade programs and other educational programs in areas like this part of the state. So I'll say that.
Thank you so much for asking this, and I love that the gentleman came to the table with a solution Very often the border and immigrants are used as a scapegoat for demagogues to make us afraid of people and to distract us from real problems that we have. Current occupant of the governor's mansion, it stunts day in, day out, putting migrants on buses, building walls, telling Texans to defend themselves against them, and literally, this is a quote from him, to take matters into your own hands. When we recognize that the vast majority of people trying to come here want to do jobs that very often the people who live here in the state of Texas don't, for whatever reason, want to do. And I've visited so many cotton gins, so many farms, so many ranches, so many towns where I see immigrants literally doing some of the toughest jobs that are available to us. Why is there not a legal, safe, orderly path for them to do it? Why isn't there an opportunity for them to make sure that they're fulfilling every commitment, including through the tax code, to make sure that they're funding those services that we all, including they and their families, depend on? It's been since Ronald Reagan was the President of the United States that we've had immigration reform. And I'll tell you, Democratic administrations, Republican administrations have completely missed the opportunity to do the right thing. I don't lay this at the feet of either party. It is up to all of us to get this right. No state better than Texas could lead the way. We live this, we experience this. I live on the border in El Paso, Texas, right next to Ciudad Juarez, the largest binational community in this hemisphere. We see the value and the importance of immigration. Let's reflect that in our laws. I want to work with you and others. And whether it's this idea on IDs, whether it's a state-based guest worker program to get you here legally to do this work, and if you want to return to your home country to make sure that you can do that, whether it's seeking asylum without waiting 6 years for your case to be adjudicated, do that in a matter of days or weeks. And if you pass, you're here, and if you don't, you got to go back to your home country. You got to follow our laws. Let's make sure that we're living that. We do that. That's 98% of the traffic that's coming in. We can then, like a laser, focus on anyone who wants to do us harm. You're here to bring fentanyl. You're here to traffic in human beings. We are going to stop you before you can do anything to anybody here in this country. Right now, that's a needle in a haystack, given the number of people who are coming over, who we don't know much about, cannot track, aren't able to find a legal way to do this. Thanks for the idea.
One critical element, I'm sorry, I don't speak in public, so I forgot this detail. It's important to give it legs. Employers pay everybody cash. We know that's the underhanded way. Okay,
That's
that's
right.
why we're fighting this problem. Offer a website that allows employers to pay same as cash. Make it a federal or a felony violation if they don't do it that way. Allow them to pay the same way, but then the immigrant pays twice the Social Security and twice the FICA. Okay, that will, of course, want them to make more wages. They'll want to demand more. That'll raise the average wages. That allows even locals to compete. It has to have legs, or else you can't fund it.
Perfect. We're going to take this question. Cynthia's going to pick the last, and I'll try to be more brief in my response.
Okay, it's gonna kind of piggyback on what y'all are talking about, and I'm not a public speaker, so I'm a little nervous.
No, you're
I'll
good.
back down. So, talking about the border and immigration and jobs, you know, I read your website, I followed and listened to your speeches, and you talk about, you know, putting in, more smart technology. That's gonna take a while. Why not complete the wall? I wanna say that I'm not prejudiced in any way, shape, or form. My grandparents are immigrants. So why not finish the wall so we can protect our state and our country from the invasion that is happening? The fentanyl, you brought it up, it's out of hand, it's out of control. You know, why not finish the wall since it's almost finished, then implement the smart technology, the towers and whatnot. And then on top of the jobs, you talk about the guest worker program. You know, the immigrants do come here. They do take a lower pay than what Americans, Texans go to school for. They have student loans to pay for. They've done this skill for years, and they're not getting paid that little bit that the migrants will take. And it's not, you know, their fault, but we can't live on that in our country, in our state, whereas they can in theirs. It's not a right or wrong, you know, it's just that we can't live on it. So what happens to our jobs? What happens to all of the people that have gone to school, who have worked in the fields forever, and they cannot live on what the immigrant is coming over and taking $8 an hour when someone else is paid thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands for school or worked in that for 30 years, and they can't get what they're justly should be paid. So there you go.
Thank you
I
for
have
this
more,
question.
but.
Yeah, those are good ones to start with. On this issue of the wall, I understand the appeal of it. If we built a big wall right before the front door of this library, it'd be very, very hard for people to get in, right? But the idea of building a wall from Brownsville to San Diego, California, 2,000 miles long, one, almost unfeasible. Two, it's not going to keep out people who have no other choice but to come here. You obviously read about that article with the 50 plus migrants who died in the back of that trailer. You don't get in the back of that trailer for kicks. You don't pull up your 11-year-old son to join you in there knowing full well that you all might die on the trip unless there is just no other option available to you. Now a wall would not have stopped that. That tractor trailer moved right through our port of entry, right through the checkpoint at the Border Patrol, right through the DPS checkpoint as well, all the way to San Antonio where they died. What we need is a legal, safe, orderly path for people to come here. There will be no need for a wall. And I live in El Paso where we have walls, raising my kids there with my wife Amy. One of, if not the safest cities in America. Before the wall was built, during construction, after construction, our relative safety actually dropped in this country. I'm telling you, walls may sound good and I understand the appeal. They're not getting the job done. If we have that safe, legal, orderly path, that's going to solve a lot of problems. Your second question about, do immigrants depress wages? I think there's some truth to this. There really is. When you are here undocumented, you have no recourse to the courts. They can say, you know what, I know the minimum wage is $7.25, I'm paying you $3, sue me if you want to, you're not here legally, right? So having those immigrants documented is important. Setting a minimum wage that's $15 and nobody earns a cent below that is also important to protect all wage earners, immigrants born here in this country or otherwise. And the third thing, I've traveled every county of this state. And I've been in La Mesa with the cotton growers, and they say, I can pay $10 an hour, I can pay $25 an hour. No one born in La Mesa wants this work. I can go to Roscoe at the cotton gin, 46 jobs there. It doesn't matter how much they pay, nobody in that community wants to work them. The only people who do are the immigrants who, for the privilege of ginning our cotton or picking it in the first place or working in the slaughterhouses or doing some of these tough jobs, are willing to come in to this country. I just want to make sure that there's a legal way to do that. And you're concerned about depressing wages, raise all wages across the board at least to 15 as the floor. We've got to have some solutions going forward. We got to get past the stunts that we currently have today. Connor, who's our last question?
All right, if you have a question, raise your hand down right here in the booth.
Hi there.
Madam, thanks for coming to
Thank
our
you.
part of the state. As we saw, the Supreme Court took some drastic action and took a lot of women's rights away. And they say they've got a hit list of what they're going to hit next. And that is our marriage. I want to know what your plan is, that if they turn this over to the state case decision, what is your plan to protect our families, for those of us tax-paying good citizens of Texas? What are you going to do in our land?
For years, in fact, for 49 years, opponents of the constitutional protection to make your own private medical decisions have been threatening that they are going to attempt a total ban on abortion with no exception for rape or incest. And for many of us, it was too far-fetched to even believe that that day would ever come. That law had stood for half a century. That law that was won by Texas women, by the way, Jane Roe, and her two attorneys, both Texas women, Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey, who successfully argued that case and won that decision in 1973. And yet here we are, total ban on abortion with no exception for rape and no exception for incest. So let's make sure that we're listening to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas when he says next on the chopping block is contraception. Following that is intimacy between same-sex couples. Following that is marriage equality. A reminder that progress is not inevitable. and no victory is ever final. They will fight us every single day to their last dying breath. We've got to make sure that we're willing to fight for these rights and our fellow Texans and human beings with the same tenacity, with the same devotion that the other side has. And not to do anything to anyone, not to take anything from anyone, but to support people who just want to be as God created them and love the people and be with the people that they have chosen in their lives. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? One, we're going to make sure that we proudly stand up for marriage equality, for the LGBTQ community, and change some things that are very wrong, although currently legal in Texas. You can be fired in this state. An employer can refuse to hire you in this state simply based on your sexual orientation. Despite the 32,000 kids in that foster care system I keep talking about, you can be denied adoption simply because you are gay in the state of Texas. And you now have a governor who, if you're the parent of a transgender child, will accuse you of child abuse, try to take that kid from your custody and turn that child over to CPS, which is so badly managed. It's the worst foster care program in the country. So we need to make sure that we are on the offense, never explaining ourselves defensively on the back foot, but saying, you know what? I'm really proud of everybody who calls this state home. I want you to be able to marry who you want to be hired by an employer and not have your sexual orientation used against you in a discriminatory manner. And I want to make sure that if you're a woman in this state, you make your own decisions about your own body, your own future, and your own health care. We have to say loud and I'll use every power in the office of that governor to fight for your rights and for you to flourish right here in the state of Texas. Thanks for asking the question. Yes, so Cynthia's reminding us, everybody, if you didn't get your question asked and you have one, we're going to go outside. We're going to have the same setup. We just want to be respectful to folks who've been out there for about 45 minutes in the sun. We told them that we'd come out as close to 3 o'clock as we could.
One more thing, if I may. If you want to work for Tyler County Democratic Party as candidate, write your name and phone number